Welcome back to our final session of TEDx Minneapolis 2020. One of the coolest things about being part of this team is that we constantly get to learn about the latest technology, including that awesome temperature scanner. We hope you have had as much fun as we have exploring these ideas and connecting with each other. And I loved hearing your ideas about talks, and I can assure you my head is already buzzing with possibilities for our next event.
This session, Collective Evolution, will challenge us to shift our perspectives and to evolve. It's easy for us to say society needs to change, but as you watch these talks, think about the choices you make. We can grow together when all of us make new choices. We'll have one more Meet the Speakers opportunity after today's session, so don't forget to ask your questions in the chat.
Our first speaker is Dr. Angela Kade Goepferd. They are the Chief Education Officer and Vice Chief of Staff for Children's Minnesota Hospital and the Medical Director of their Gender Health Program. Dr. Goepferd has been recognized widely both in the state of Minnesota and across the country for their work advancing the care of LGBTQ youth. And as you'll see in this talk, Angela Kade's passion is absolutely infectious, and I cannot wait to share it with all of you.
Are you a mommy or a daddy? The little boy called to me one day when I went to pick my youngest son up from the daycare playground. He looked up at me curious, waiting for my answer. But before I answered him, I thought about how many times in my life I've been asked that essential question. Are you a boy or a girl? Sometimes it's actually been more of an accusation, meant to make me feel shame for having an androgynous or ambiguous gender presentation. Sometimes the question's been hurled at me with menace, meant to make me feel unsafe because I've made someone else feel uncomfortable, say in a public restroom. But often, in my role as a pediatrician and as a parent, it's been asked with curiosity, without judgment, a child's genuine attempt to put me into the categories known to them. Now, this little guy was probably about 3 or 4 years old, and I could tell by his tone that he was asking out of curiosity. He genuinely wanted to know which of the 2 adult categories known to him did I fit into? Was I a mommy or a daddy? You see, I look quite a bit like a daddy, but I sound an awful lot like a mommy. So I bent down and I said to him, you know what? I'm not a mommy or a daddy. I'm a mappa. A mappa, he said. What's that? Well, I explained, a mappa is like a mommy and a daddy, both. Oh, okay, he said. So then, what's your favorite dinosaur? And what it took this little guy seconds to accept, it often takes grown-ups a lot longer to unlearn and realize that more exists among human beings than can be answered with the simple question, are you a boy or a girl? Are you a man or a woman? Are you a mommy or a daddy? What I'm here to talk to you about today, as a pediatrician who specializes in caring for transgender and gender diverse kids, as a parent with 3 young kids of my own, and as a person who identifies as both queer and gender diverse, is how kids understand both simple and complex ideas of gender identity, and where the journey that many young transgender and gender diverse kids are on today will ultimately lead all of us. So let's start with how kids understand gender identity. Well, from the age of about 2, kids can understand gender differences. Now, this is mostly based on physical characteristics and anatomy as they sort and put people into categories, boys and girls, mommies and daddies. Kids at 2 are actually very good at putting things into categories, and they're very concrete and binary thinkers, so this is a fun and easy task for them. As they move into age 3 and 4, they then begin to figure out where they fit. They've seen the categories and they're turning the lens inward to discover where they fit in the categories that have been explained to them, most of which are boy and girl. Now, they often develop more sophisticated understanding of physical characteristics and anatomy around this time, and they're often not shy about sharing their discoveries with us. They may exclaim, I'm a girl and I have a vagina. And that may happen in the pediatrician's office or in the checkout line at the grocery store. They have figured out their place in the world and they are claiming it. It shouldn't surprise you then that some transgender kids are also claiming their identities as young as 3 and 4 years old. They know the categories. They know how they should feel inside based on their anatomy. And they also know that the way that they see themselves doesn't line up with other people's expectations. From as young as some kids can talk, they're explaining to their parents the truth about their identities. Now, as kids move beyond into the age of 4 and 5, they're starting to figure out gender role, or what does it mean to be a boy or a girl? This is when kids are understanding how they should act based on their gender identities, and they're learning about concepts like boys' toys and girls' toys for the first time, which even if we don't teach it to them, all it takes is one trip to Target to figure out which toys belong to who. And so they're first figuring out what do they like. They're trying on different ways of dressing, different costumes. They're doing pretend and imaginary play. They're playing with different types of toys. They're figuring out first what they like, and then is it okay or not? And this can actually be a hard time for all kids, not just kids who are transgender and gender diverse, as they first figure out what they love, and then they figure out might they be punished in big or small ways for being themselves. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a parent, and I have 3 boys, or rather, I have 3 kids, 6, 6, and 4, who were assigned male at birth and continue to identify as boys. And when our kids were growing up, we tried to expand their gender categories just a little bit. So instead of saying to them, these are boy parts and these are girl parts, we taught them that most boys have penises and most girls have vaginas, just to leave open the possibility that biology isn't destiny and that how someone feels inside or their gender identity may not line up with expectations based on anatomy. They actually adapted quite quickly to this, and I remember the day that one of my sons came up to me and he said, "Mappa, I'm a most boy." I thought, tell me just a little bit more about that. Well, he said, you know how most boys have penises, but some boys don't? I'm a boy that has a penis. I'm a most boy. Fair enough, I thought. And yet, despite our attempt to expand gender categories a little bit for my kids, and despite them growing up with a parent who goes by the name of Mappa and who identifies as non-binary, my own kids still brought these gender expectations home with them. I remember one day when my son Theo, he's the beaming, smiling child here in the blue princess dress. I remember when he came home from daycare one day with that exact dress in his backpack. And he said to me, "Mappa, I don't want to bring this dress for show and tell anymore." Now, you can tell by this picture how much Theo loves that dress, and he used to love dressing up in costume, and I could tell it made him feel a little bit sad. So I said, "Theo, tell me why." Well, he explained, one of my friends and one of my teachers told me that boys don't wear dresses. Oh, I said, okay. Well, Theo, do you remember when we talked about that clothes are for everyone and toys are for everyone? In our family, you can wear whatever clothes you want. In our family, it's okay for boys to wear dresses. Now, in some families, boys might not get to wear dresses, but those aren't the rules in our house, and that's not the rules in our family. I know, he said, I just don't want to anymore. And you know what? He never did. And not only did he never bring that princess dress for show and tell anymore, he really stopped dressing up and playing princess after that. And was it because at 4.5, he was ready to be done dressing up as a princess and playing pretend? Maybe. Or was it because he was worried that if he brought that dress back to show and tell again and violated the rules of being a boy, that he might be punished for that? Maybe. I'll never know the answer to that for sure. But what we do know is that by the time most kids are 6 and 7 years old, they are conforming into traditional gender roles. What I mean by that is that girls are becoming more feminine, boys are becoming more masculine. They're starting to conform their hairstyles, the way they dress, the toys they play with, their peer groups, to what society expects of them based on their gender identities. Now, is this because naturally boys and girls are different? Or is this because our society has very strict expectations of how boys and girls should act based on their identities? The research would tell us that it's probably some of both. And honestly, we'll probably never know the answer to that question for sure. But here's one thing that we do know. What we do know is that kids who violate our expectations around gender are punished for doing so. What we know is that 80% of transgender and gender diverse kids experience harassment in schools. In fact, we know that the #1 reason that kids are bullied in school is for gender nonconforming dress or behavior. Those girls who are too masculine or boys who are too feminine, regardless of their underlying sexual orientation or gender identity. We know that up to 60% of transgender kids are rejected by their parents, and that the disruption of this fundamental attachment has devastating consequences for their self-esteem. One of those consequences being that in some studies, trans and gender diverse kids are 8 to 9 times more likely to try to take their own life. And we also know that the world is changing. We know that in 2016, in the state of Minnesota, when we asked 9th and 11th graders to describe their gender identities to us, that 2.8% of them, or nearly 3%, identified as transgender and gender nonconforming. That's close to 3 times what we've previously found in adult studies. We also know that we're hearing new words and new language to describe gender identity all the time, mostly from the young people in our lives. Words like genderqueer, gender expansive, gender fluid, non-binary, bigender, agender, and on and on. We know that kids today are discovering their gender identities now more than ever, and they're finding new language and new models to share those identities with us. So you're thinking, I get it. This is a trend. This is a fad. This is cool. This is the next new thing, and my kid, and the kid in my kid's class, and the neighbor kid, and actually, maybe even you, Dr. Goepferd. You're part of this new wave, this cool trend of being transgender and gender diverse. Hold that thought for just a second. Let's go back to those 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, the ones I was telling you about early on, the ones who are learning about gender categories and they're grabbing at words and language for the first time to describe that to others. Do you know what else those kids are learning how to do? Do you know what else they love to do? They are learning how to color. And they, in fact, love to color. And what if, when our 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds were learning how to color, what if we reached into our pocket and we pulled out 2 crayons, pink and blue, and we said, draw us a picture of who you are. Draw us all who you imagine yourself to be, but we'd like you to do it with just 1 crayon, pink or blue. No, I'm sorry, you actually can't choose both. You have to pick one, pink or blue. Imagine all the pictures we would never see. Imagine all the vividness and color that kids could imagine themselves to be and that they see reflected back to them in the world. Imagine all that we would miss. And now imagine if we handed them this. Imagine if we handed them a box of 64 crayons, and instead of saying pick one, we said, pick as many as you would like. Show us who you are. Tell us all the stories. Pick one for a while that's your favorite, and then pick another one, and then go back to your original favorite. If you can imagine it, then you can draw it. It is my foundational belief that we all know who we are from a very young age, including the truest expression of our gender identity. And we actually spend most of our lives searching for the words and the tools and the safety and the agency to share ourselves with the world. Queer author and activist Leslie Feinberg said, "Gender is the poetry we write with the language we are taught." Gender is the poetry we write with the language we are taught. If we give kids the language, if we open the box of crayons for us, they will tell us who they are. So no, I don't think that this is a trend or a fad. I think that this is the revealing of a truth that has always existed. And kids can't draw the truth of themselves with just one crayon. Child advocate Marian Wright Edelman said, "Kids cannot become that which they cannot see." And kids today are seeing more and more LGBTQ folks, people like me, people like the actors and actresses on this screen, more than ever before. We are giving them a bigger box of crayons. And they are actually drawing for us more imaginative pictures of what it means to be a boy or a girl or something in between than many of us can ever remember. And so what is our job as parents, as pediatricians, as aunts, uncles, grandparents, friends, neighbors, teachers? Our job is to listen. Our job is to ask interesting questions and then listen for the answer. Who are you? What do you like? What makes you feel like you? And when kids begin to show themselves to us, we support them without steering. We reveal our own gender identities. We ask and share names and pronouns. We give them all the examples of what it means to be a boy or a girl or transgender or something in between. What I've learned in my role as a pediatrician for the last 15 years, and as a pediatrician who specializes in the care of transgender and gender diverse kids, is that these kids don't need me to figure them out. They need me to listen, to really listen, and to help them amplify the voice that's inside them. They don't actually need me to diagnose them. They need me to help them be heard. And when these kids begin to show themselves to us, when they start down that brave journey of self-discovery, we remind them that they are beautiful and strong and resilient. And most importantly, we love them. We fully and fiercely and wholeheartedly love them. And if we do this, our kids will draw for us the most beautiful pictures of who they are. They will write for us the beautiful poetry of their identities. And in doing this, they will expand the world of gender. And not just for them, but for all of us. Because how many of us were given just 2 crayons to choose from, but longed for a bigger box? How many of us were never given the right tools or language to describe our own identities? You see, in loving and supporting transgender and gender diverse kids, we're not only helping them be more free and true versions of themselves, we're helping all of us have the language we need to discover ourselves. Leslie Feinberg also said, "My right to be me is tied with 1,000 threads to your right to be you." Because after all, we all deserve a bigger box of crayons. Thank you.
Well, I, for one, really appreciated hearing just how colorful the world is. Thank you, Dr. Goepferd, for giving us that vocabulary. Next up is Michael Fanuele. Michael has had quite the eclectic career, from politics to comedy to landing and doing quite well in advertising. Our curation team couldn't stop talking about how inspired they were after meeting with Michael, and he'll teach us all how to inspire others too. Welcome, Michael.
I hate Bono. I fucking hate Bono. And it's not the music. I've always thought he was a loudmouth, a throbbing ego in leather pants. But one night years ago, I was forced to see him. It was my friend's bachelor party. He loves U2, and so I went to the show, but I was determined to be miserable. Now, as any of you have seen U2 know, this is rock and roll church. Bono starts preaching. He asks us to join the March of Justice from the bridges of Selma to the summit of Kilimanjaro. He asks us to eradicate poverty and AIDS and racism and malaria. Heck, I think he asks us to eradicate farts. And as he's doing this, the flags of every African nation descend from the ceiling. This is exactly why I hate Bono. And yet I find myself, against my instinct, standing. And my hands are waving in the air, and I'm looking around for the Amnesty International sign-up table. I want to quit my job, my stupid, shallow job at a global ad agency, and dance my way to Africa and suckle sick children at my breast. Because of Bono, the man I hated, Now, I didn't quit my job and go to Africa, but since that day, my professional priorities have changed. I don't just want to help companies sell more of this and more of that. I want to help them make the world a better place. I figured if guitars could be an instrument for social justice, maybe commercials could be as well. So, what the hell did Bono do to me? And more importantly, how do we do that to one another? Because no matter what we want to do, sell something, build something, change something, be something, we're gonna have to make people move. Yesterday would have been my big brother's 53rd birthday. He died 10 years ago. He was hit by a drunk driver, ironically, right after he had gotten out of rehab himself, after he had gotten out of prison. He struggled with addiction his whole life. And I told him all the time, Danny, don't do this, don't do that. Don't you see you've got a future? Don't you see you've got a son? Oh, I could make a case. I was the captain of my high school debating team. In college, my debate partner and I took second place at the World Championships. We beat Ted Cruz. Oh, I could logic and reason and argue. But of course, that didn't help my brother. One year during college, over a break, I got a letter from my best friend. He said he couldn't be my friend anymore. Everything was an argument. It was exhausting. You could imagine how I felt. The thing of which I was most proud, my superpower, was the very thing that made me unlovable. I've learned the hard way that being right is not winning. In fact, I've learned that being right often gets in the way of moving people. Instead, if we want to move people, if we want to get them on our side, head, heart, and body, we need to loosen our grip on logic and infuse our communications with far more mysterious energies, passions and quirks and dreams and delusions. If we want to inspire, we need to learn to be a muse, to talk like music. A lyrical language that has no interest in changing your mind, but every desire to move your body. And here's what I want to share with you today. This power to inspire is not a gift from the gods given to the good and the great. It is a learnable, practicable skill. Every single one of us can be a muse. If you could feel Bono or Oprah, you're on your way to being Bono or Oprah. There's just one really uncomfortable ingredient. But before we get to that, I want to be clear that inspiration is the most powerful force in the universe. It has won wars and created nations. It has birthed businesses and masterpieces. I'm sure in our way, it's affected and changed all of our lives. The warm words of a coach or a teacher or a book. Inspiration makes us feel like giants. It whispers, you can do it, and we leap. And when we leap, amazing things happen. Research shows that inspiration gets real results. Inspired employees are more productive. Inspired athletes win more games. You might have heard of the Eye of the Tiger study. They take a group of salespeople and before their shift, divide them into two teams. One team listens to Eye of the Tiger, one team doesn't. The team that listens to Eye of the Tiger closes more sales deals again and again. That's weird. That's amazing. Only very recently have scientists begun to unlock the biology of inspiration. You've probably heard of mirror neurons. They're the neurons that help us learn to do things by replicating what we see in the world. A baby sees her mother's mouth move, mirror neurons fire, her mouth moves, she learns to talk. But mirror neurons also mirror feelings, emotions. When you see Jennifer Lawrence sad, you feel sad. When you see Steph Curry locked in, you feel intensity. These neurons are literally the biological mechanism that lets us share our feelings, and they are the root for inspiration. Very simply, inspiration is a transfer of feeling from a person or a thing to a person or an audience through the mirror neurons into the limbic system. If the emotions are strong enough, hearts pump, action ensues. It's actually a lot like music. Music triggers feelings deep within our limbic system based on the sounds that it makes. So minor notes sound sad. Punk rock sounds angry. Prince sounds like sex. It's It's why Miles Davis was right when he said anybody can play music. The note is 20%. The attitude of the motherfucker playing it is 80%. Attitude, feeling. Conductors say once again with feeling, and we've got that. We can cry and laugh and grunt and groan. We can talk the way we sing karaoke. And it seems of all of the emotions, the one that's most effective at moving people is passion. I work in marketing, so I worship at the temple of Nike. They have built a global juggernaut worth billions of dollars by never once telling you what makes their stuff better than anybody else's. They've never made a case for what they sell. They share their passion for sports and athletes, and your brain gets on board. You see, when we share our passion, when we share what we love, we make ourselves vulnerable. And when we are vulnerable, the people around us, hardwired for empathy, lean in. They gather around. So if you want to inspire, share what you love, share what you desire, and do so with some emotional verve. But there's a catch. Scientists have also figured out what cracks this mirror of magic emotional transfer. It's thinking. It seems like the culprit is the prefrontal cortex. When we are in the act of thinking critically, thinking analytically, our ability to feel is suppressed. In fact, neurologically speaking, feeling and thinking are opposite states. Or said another way, persuasion and inspiration are opposite and antagonistic endeavors. The more you try to logic, the less you arouse. And we know this. We know that we're odd emotional ducks. We've all read the books. We blink, we're nudged, System 1 thinking crushes System 2 thinking, and yet we hold on to the hope that maybe we can move each other with facts and figures and reason and logic. So with the help of Bono, I've created an equation for inspiration. It's very simple. It is passion minus reason. Passion minus reason equals inspiration. If we want to inspire, we've got to express our passion in a way that stokes mirror neurons. But we've also got to circumvent that pesky prefrontal cortex. We've got to go around that quicksand of analytic overthink. And we do that by being intentionally unreasonable, irrational, odd, different. Stop making sense. Like music, give people things to feel, not propositions to debate. Like music, be the leap, not the logic. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying throw logic and reason to the side and forget facts. Those things are critically important, especially in figuring out what we want to do, what's right and what's wrong, what our strategies are. But when it is go time, when you are looking at your team, your company, your kids, your audience, yourself in the mirror, when it is go time, all that reason gets in the way. Now, you might also say, but Michael, isn't this just gussied up emotional manipulation? Isn't this the alchemy of con men and propaganda artists? Yes. Yes, it is. Be angry about that, but only for a second, because we've got work to do. 3 skills of inspiration. Number 1, get delusional. Nobody is inspired to do small things. We are inspired to do big, grand, and impossible things. When Al Gore was running for president, he said he wanted to reduce carbon emissions 20%. Ambitious. He lost. Barack Obama said he wanted to lower the tides of the oceans. Preposterous. He won. And not just because of that statement, but Barack Obama, like all great leaders, had a way of framing things in epic terms. And when you do that, when you make our goals almost insurmountable, you give your audience, you give your team the greatest gift. You turn them into the most powerful creatures in the universe, underdogs, on the verge of becoming heroes. I worked at the ad agency that created the most interesting man in the world for Dos Equis. The original brief was to make Dos Equis the second best-selling premium imported Mexican beer in America. It was only when we got delusional, when we asked ourselves how we make this weird beer the most interesting thing in a bar, more interesting than the people and their music and their songs and their stories and their jokes, that we birthed the most interesting man in the world. So take your goal and begin to nudge it toward the unreasonable. Do you want to grow your business 2%? Aim for 5%. Or forget numbers altogether and try to change the world. A soap that makes all women feel beautiful? A bank that heals racial wounds? Do you want to quit your job and start a business? Start that business with passion that begins to make your knees wobble. If a rock band can eradicate AIDS, so can an ice cream store. Delusional goals do not diminish us, they ennoble us. Number 2, show up to stir up. It's very difficult to inspire if the moment feels like yesterday and the day before and the day before that. When Lincoln got to Gettysburg, according to contemporary accounts, he was grotesque. He was dirty and his suit didn't fit. And he begins, as we know, by saying 77 years ago. Now, when I was a kid, I thought that's how everybody spoke in the 1860s. I'm 23 years old. No. Lincoln was purposefully referring to an archaic verse from the Bible. He shows up like a dirtbag, and he drops this weird-ass phrase. But that was the point. He was saying, sit up, people. What is about to happen here is unusual, is extraordinary, is sacred. And that's when the war began to change. I've used PowerPoint a lot professionally. And now one of the founders of PowerPoint said his goal is to give power to the bullet point. Terrifying. But to a professional debater, it was like crack. You want reason, you want evidence? Look at my bullet points. Look at all my bullet points. I can't be wrong. It was only when I was on the other side of the table, when I was hearing pitches from agencies and consultants, that I realized all that strategy, all of those bullet points put us in such an analytical state of mind, it was impossible to do anything bold and brave. Bullet points murder courage. So think about what rule you want to break when it's time to inspire. It could be subtle. A coach tells a team to take a knee. A CEO doesn't sit at the head of the table. A guy begins his TEDx talk by saying, fuck. Or maybe it's not subtle at all. Maybe a quarterback kneels during the national anthem. Number 3, love. This is my favorite. It's impossible to inspire anybody if they don't believe that you are on their side. And this is more than just respect. This is love. This is looking at people, finding their superpower, and giving them the conviction that because of that power, they are capable of accomplishing whatever they set their mind to. And give it a name, make it a thing, say it out loud. You are the queen of bouncing back. You are the general of chocolate cupcakes. When my son was starting to play soccer, the coach put him on defense, and he was miserable. No fun back there. Until the coach took him aside one day and said, dude, you are the assassin on this team. Anyone coming down the field, you got to take them out. You are the Jason Bourne of soccer. That's love. And when we hear that we are loved and why we are loved, it's a disorienting experience. It is passionate. It is the stuff of inspiration. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you want to inspire, and you do want to inspire, you've got to be more passionate and less reasonable. And you do that by cracking yourself open and sharing everything inside, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your passions. And as you do that, your voice changes, your body changes, you break some rules, you stoke some mirror neurons, you get out of the way of that prefrontal cortex, you become amused, like music. You are the leap, not the logic. Now, I know this is easy to say and it's hard to do, especially in a world that prizes reason and logic and order. We're told all the time, well, think reasonably about this. Stop being so emotional, especially women. Well, I know that being emotional is an act of rebellion in this world. And who better to teach us how to rebel than a rock and roll star? Bono was asked, how do you do it, dude? How do you stand on stages night after night and move people to dance, to feel, to donate money? How do you do it? He said, PowerPoint. No, he didn't. he said, I don't. I put on the leather pants and I let the leather pants tell me what to do. Fuck, that guy is good. Thank you.
You guys would probably be surprised how many speakers ask our team about the TED rules for swearing as they're planning their talks. And our answer has always been, as long as it helps you drive your point home. And I would say that's exactly what Michael did. And if you want to learn more from Michael about how to inspire, check out his book, which I also have here, which is called Stop Making Sense: The Art of Inspiring Anybody. Now, you are in for a treat with this next video. Ragamala Dance Company's co-artistic directors Renee and Aparna Ramaswamy and choreographic associate Ashwini Ramaswamy, who are mother and daughters, draw from the artistic traditions and spirituality of their South Indian heritage. The dance works contemplate how humans receive, interpret, codify, preserve, and recreate culture, and their intergenerational practice serves as a dialogue about the contemporary human experience. In a moment, the Ramaswamis will each perform a solo from Ragamala's upcoming production, The Fires of Varanasi, which evokes an elaborate ritual where time is suspended and humans merge with the divine. Through imagery that reflects the cosmic trinity of Varanasi, the sacred pilgrimage routes, the Ganges River, and the patron deity Shiva, the creators imagine a metaphorical crossing place.
Attack! Ta! Attack! Cut! Ta! Ta! Kin! Na! Ta! Ta! Akin! Na! Get! Ta! Ka! Adi! Ki! Attack! Ka! Adi! Di! Get! Ta! Again! Di! Ki! Na! Attack! Ta! Did
करचरणतले मौलं गंगा 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 शशाङ्कं करचरणतले 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 शीतलाङ्गा शीतलाङ्गा भुजङ्गा शीतलाङ्गा भुजङ्गा वामे भागे दयाद्र वामे 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 भागे वामे भागे दयाद्र हिमगिरितनय 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 चन्दनं 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 सर्वगा सर्वगात्रे 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 पितं शेतं प्रभूतं हितं शीतं प्रभूतं तव कनकसभानाथ सोढुं क्व शक्तिः 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 चित्ते 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 निर्वेदतप्ते यदि भवति न ते यदि भवति न ते नित्यवासो नित्यवासो नित्यवासो
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Bo Shambho Shiva Shambho Swayambho.
Shambho
Tom tom tarikita kita tom.
Wow, that was absolutely beautiful. I could watch them all day. Now, before we unveil the closing talk of this event, we want to take a moment to recognize our friends and colleagues, the amazing team of volunteers who work behind the scenes year-round to put this event together. You've seen them in the breakout sessions and in the chat, and there are many more that you might not have seen working behind the scenes to bring you this event. So let's give them some love in the chat. Thank you all for your work and for adapting with us on this venture into the unknown of virtual events. We also want to say a special thank you to Chris Lindquist, our creative lead. And sadly, this is going to be his last event as part of our team. And we are so going to miss him and his team at Little & Company. Chris, we cannot thank you and your team enough for the leadership and creative vision that has been so integral in bringing this and so many other events to life.
And with Little & Company's departure, we do have an opening for a creative agency partner. We would love to make beautiful things with you. If you're interested in learning more, please email me at director@TEDxMinneapolis.com. And now I am honored to announce our final speaker. Sagirah Shahid is a Black Muslim poet, arts educator, and performance artist. You may have seen this visual representation of her work on Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis. Sagirah was one of 4 poets selected by the city to participate in Nicollet Lanterns, a collaborative public arts project that transformed original poems into functional, sculptural lanterns. Let's hear from Sagirah.
Incubus, or shit white people be on. Let me feed on your trauma. Leave the skin on as I suck. You dry. Can you sass this up? Make it about how you overcame. Insert your brokenness here. Somewhere in the story, I must rescue you. Somewhere else, remind the audience this is only a story. I am the audience. Show me where it hurts. Is it contagious? I'm in cathartic. For me, your voice is an actor. Your voice is a demigod. I must devour from the stem. Often when I have recited this poem to predominantly white audiences in the Twin Cities, I swap out the word white for y'all. Because on some twisted level, and a persona poem where I express my frustrations with white people's obsession with the pain of the oppressed, an obsession bent on consuming the trauma and grief of the very people responding to the circumstances created by state-sanctioned violence and white supremacy, on some level, I have internalized the very violence of consumption I aim to critique. When I originally agreed to stand here to talk with TEDx Minneapolis, it was BC, months before Minneapolis' own Red Summer. BC before COVID, before the uprisings, before George Floyd was murdered. I was supposed to come here today to talk to you all about Black Muslim women and the arts. You see, I'm a Black Muslim woman and I'm an artist, I'm a poet. I wanted you to know about the abundance of Black Muslim women who are creatives and curators and culture makers. I wanted you to know about and meaningfully invest in the creative works and legacies of Black Muslim women who curate, who laid the groundwork in their innovations and culture making, who have built and continue to build and contribute to our broader culture. I wanted to tell all you pleasant white folks viewing this to seek out the Black Muslim women and the non-binary artists in your communities, established, emergent, and potential artists, and meaningfully support and invest in their work, to hire them to be your speakers on your panels, to assign their poetry collections and novels and scholarship in your classrooms, to curate series featuring their photographs and installations in your galleries and museums, to review their albums, to commission their murals, their dances, their plays, to hire them as editors, to feature their films in your theaters, to subscribe to their literary journals, and to have all of you pleasant viewers redistribute some of your wealth and invest into their work, their organizations. However, in preparation for today, I struggled to steady my mind to see anything other than the paradox that is this pandemic, that is Minneapolis's persistent attempted genocide upon my people, upon all oppressed peoples who dare to defend themselves against the violence of Minnesota. Pretty Minnesota, with its sculpted greenways and pristine precincts and passion-felt promises that dangle glittery decadence in one hand while bulldozing flat the homes of our siblings with the other hand. Pretty Minnesota, land of the man whose co-workers in the Congo called gentle, called beautiful, called a hugger, Big Floyd, the Texas chopped and screwed MC, the high school tight ends, and college basketball king, who followed 35W in Mississippi up here to this honey-tongued northern state to drive trucks and work security in bistros and nightclubs like my own father and uncles. Big Floyd, the father, the lover of nachos, the negotiator, the hugger, who wanted to learn bachata. Big Floyd, who would stay after hours to help the cleanup crew. Big Floyd, the hugger, who survived COVID, who survived bullets, who survived America until pretty Minnesota brought its knee to his neck. In one version of my TEDx talk, I wanted to start my talk with a quotation, a brief excerpt of a speech from Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison gave the speech called A Humanistic View in 1975. In this version of my TEDx talk, I wanted to quote the following from that speech. The function, the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. In this incomplete and out-of-context quote of Morrison, I neglected and failed to make sense of my own anger and frustrations for what was happening, what keeps being filmed and documented and picked over by political pundits and self-proclaimed leaders and organizers and activists and artists. That is, this strategically continued and multi-pronged assault on our lives. Yes, I'm talking about anger and rage. Yes, this is rage for George Floyd, for David Smith, Thurman Blevin, Philando Castile, Jamar Clark, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud Arbery, Nia Wilson, Tamir Rice, Nebra Hassanin, Mike Brown, Eric and Erica Gardner, and the Black Muslim family burned alive in their Denver, Colorado home. Yes, this rage for Minnesota, like any other state in America, where Black people here, while only 7% of the total population are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. Yes, this rage for a place as cute as Minnesota to act like we're supposed to grin and bear the realities of Black folks in Minnesota, making nearly half the median income of white Minnesotans grin and nod our heads generously for the selective and heavily regulated instances of white generosity, grants and loans and mutual aid efforts that pop up to undo, however temporarily, the collective amnesia white America perpetuates whenever it desires to feel less terribly about not seeing the very racism it hired to assassinate us. Right now, in this very moment, I am redoing this TEDx talk for the umpteenth time, fully aware that TEDx Minneapolis asked their only Black Muslim speaker to film a rehearsal for her talk on September the 11th, 2020. The same day, Minneapolis courts will hear out the lethal whining of 4 murderers in blue who waited for news crews to flee our city before blatantly refusing to accept accountability. These 4 officers, with whom our city council and mayor financed, continue to deny their individual and institutional roles in the murdering of George Floyd. At 8:30 a.m. on September the 11th, 2020, I attended a community demonstration outside of the courthouse, while TEDx Minneapolis emailed me and my fellow rehearsal participants hours later to notify us that a demonstration was happening for George Floyd and that it shouldn't impact our commutes to evening rehearsals near downtown Minneapolis. September the 11th, 2020 is the first email communication throughout our spring and summer preparation to stand on this red dot where TEDx Minneapolis mentioned George Floyd's name. I named this particular date, this one of many instances of a lifetime of such instances where I have accepted historically white institutions and their allies' prioritization of my unpaid labor over the care of my personhood as a Black Muslim woman who does not come from a wealthy family, processing and struggling to do more than quietly survive America's real-time nightmare. It is within this nightmare that officers like Thomas Lane, a 37-year-old rookie who within 10 seconds of banging his flashlight against the car window of Big Floyd, unholstered his state-issue gun and pointed it in the face of Big Floyd and yelled and spewed swear words into the face of Big Floyd, who was clearly confused, clearly in shock, clearly traumatized and re-traumatized by the domineering aggressions of Officer Lane, who pointed a loaded gun into Floyd's face. It does not matter to the state of Minnesota whether or not the rookie in blue comes from a Minneapolis police family royalty. The state of Minnesota does not care that just a few years prior to becoming a weapon of capitalism, that Officer Lane himself had utilized his own privileges to successfully finesse himself out of at least a dozen arrests and traffic violations. The state does not care. Why would we expect the rookie in blue to understand that the 15 minutes of real-ass fear and terror from Big Floyd, the hugger, who tried repeatedly to beg for his life? It wasn't just 8 minutes and 46 seconds of one man's knee on another man's neck. It was 34 minutes and 19 seconds of Officer Thomas Lane's body cam footage. It is every day that followed the year 1619. It is every lynching filmed or unfilmed. It is Mankato, Minnesota in December of 1862. It is every eviction, housed or unhoused, by notice or by bulldozer. It is Woodward recording our presidents admitting to downplaying the severity of the virus, and months and thousands of deaths later, selling a book about it. The reason why one version of my TEDx Minneapolis talk began with a quote from Toni Morrison was because I remembered not the speech and its unabashed and instructive criticalness, but instead I remembered what white America had told me I should remember. Even in my desperation, even with my subconscious spiritual mind trying its best to nudge me into seeing the answer right there with an ancestor, equipped and fierce with its instruction, I still only remembered what white America had remembered and recirculated down my throat. I do, however, want to share a better contextualized quote from Morrison. It is important, therefore, to know who the real enemy is, and to know the function, the very serious function of racism, which is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you from explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language, so you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says that you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says that you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of that is necessary. Before that portion of her speech, Morrison goes into a full analysis in 1975 about the context of this country that is inclusive of understanding the class dynamics of this country and the longevity of and severity of this oppression that is intertwined. And so I want to be clear that right now I'm taking responsibility for my own internalization of the weapons of my oppressor. And I need you to clearly understand that this oppression is directly and undeniably connected and interwoven with yours. Yes, you viewers streaming from the comfort of your cozy home. Yes, you, the camera crews, the orchestrators of this lofty illusion that prioritizes deadlines over compassion and tenderness and intentionality of action. Your oppression and my oppression are intertwined. Viewer, your obligation is well within your own reach, so grab it.
Cómo duele, 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 cómo duele. Cómo duele, cómo duele. Mataron a George como filando, como llama. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. En Minneapolis la policía mataron otro negro. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. Mataron a George como filando, como llama, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. La policía en Minnesota mataron otro negro. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. La policía en Minneapolis mataron otro negro. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. Mataron a Big Floyd, el pana. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. Mataron a Jorge, Big Floyd, como filando. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. La calle están quemando en Minneapolis, San Pablo. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele. Mataron a Big Floyd como filando, como llama. Cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele, cómo duele.
Maria Issa wrote that Bomba as a tribute to her friend George Floyd. Under contributors, you can find Maria's entry where you can read more about her memories of Big Floyd. His death cuts deep as we not only lost a beloved community member who did absolutely nothing to deserve his fate, but it also highlighted the systemic racism and violence against Black folks so present in this state. And Sagirah demonstrated this in her talk. She is calling us in. She is speaking to you, to me, to all of Minnesota, to TEDx Minneapolis, to white folks everywhere, showing us how we are causing harm and what we must do better. And for everyone watching, it's clear that this community has a lot of healing to do. We're in this together. I know I, and probably many of us, need to digest and reflect on the truths we just heard. In this final Meet the Speakers session, let's talk about this. How did you feel watching this talk? What will you take into action? And what will you do differently? And what should we at TEDx Minneapolis be doing differently? Tomorrow, to continue integrating what we heard here, Sagirah Shahid will guide us through a meditation, embodiment, and collective reflection. In Sagirah's words, this meditation is about surrendering to our truth. We are living in the largest global movement and fight for Black life. This meditation honors our commitment to inner activism, truth, and showing up in the world to fight for all beings. I have taken a virtual class with Sagirah during the pandemic, and I can honestly say that this session alone is well worth the ticket price for this whole weekend. If you are watching on YouTube and want to join us tomorrow, you can purchase a ticket at TEDxMinneapolis.com. We are also offering free access for Sagirah's session to BIPOC folks, so shoot us a note at relations@TEDxMinneapolis.com for details. I hope to see you all there starting at 11 a.m. Central tomorrow.
Wow. Well, there has been so much to see and to think about during this event, and I know you're going to want some time to take it all in. So I'm really happy to share that all of our ticket holders will continue to have access to all of the content, including the recordings of our sessions, in Attendify through the end of the year. And for everyone else, keep an eye on the Global TEDx YouTube channel. We'll be submitting all of these talks to TED, and we hope to see them posted there in the coming weeks. Now, as we wrap up TEDx Minneapolis Adaptation, we are already hard at work searching for the next speakers to be featured at TEDx Minneapolis. So, do you have an idea we're spreading, or do you know somebody who does? Check out our Submit an Idea page at TEDxMinneapolis.com for all of the details. For our paid ticket holders, we hope you have loved discovering all of the content available in Attendify. And as one last surprise for you, check out your virtual swag bag. You can find this section linked on the main page with exclusive offers and freebies curated just for you.
So thanks again to all sponsors, individual donors, supporters, and patrons who made this event financially possible. We'll see you all at the after party with the speakers starting at 4:30 Central. And if any of these ideas resonated with you and you want to support the future of TEDx Minneapolis so that we can continue to amplify local ideas that make an impact globally, please click the donate link on our website today. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is where we'll say farewell for the last time. We will see everyone else at the final Meet the Speakers session starting in about 5 minutes. Thank you all for joining us this weekend and for adapting with us in this strange and unprecedented time.